Have you ever met someone who can deconstruct an argument in seconds, create a whole new philosophy before lunch, and simultaneously forget to eat said lunch? Congratulations, you've probably met an INTP. These are the kinds of people who get lost in thought while they're brushing their teeth and suddenly discover a new paradox of human existence. The question I'm asking today is, are they one of the smartest Myers-Briggs personality types? If you don't know who I am, my name is Susan Storm. I'm the founder of a website called psychologyjunkie.com, where I've written over 1,000 articles about the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types, as well as 5 different books about the personality types. And today I want to get into what makes INTPs so intelligent and how their brand of intelligence is very different from that of many other types. Let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll start by looking at the hard data and the stats. INTPs have the second highest IQ scores among high school students, according to the third edition of the MBTI manual. They also have the third highest grades of high school students. When it comes to SAT scores, they score higher than any of the other Myers-Briggs personality types among liberal arts students. And when it comes to MCAT scores, they score second highest of all of the 16 personality types. In other words, INTPs tend to dominate standardized tests. They sometimes are the types of people who will casually ace an exam that they forgot was happening and didn't even prepare for. This is based on some of my own personal experience. Let's talk about their learning style, though. How do they get this intelligence? Where is it coming from? INTPs tend to eschew traditional learning environments, and they like to learn in their own way. You won't necessarily find them highlighting textbooks or color coding tabs on a binder. The way they approach learning is a little bit more chaotic. It's a little bit more spontaneous and more inventive and individualistic than what most people are used to seeing. They like to quietly obsess over abstract problems, and they're very independent when it comes to learning. If you really want an INTP to excel, you need to give them space to solve problems in their own way and try things out that might be a departure from the traditional method. They like hard, difficult, abstract problems, especially if these problems have stumped everyone else. They like to be the one who sticks with the problem longer, can actually solve it when everyone else is scratching their heads and they don't know what to do. They do tend to be a little bit rebellious of authority and structure. If you get them trapped in a really rigid routine, then they tend to rebel and feel a bit frustrated with the whole learning process in general. They like to teach themselves what they need to learn, when they need to learn it, and they like having the space and privacy to do it in their own way. Most INTPs love to learn as much as they can through devouring as many books as they can in these bursts of intellectual hunger. But now let's talk about what's actually happening in the INTP's brain that makes them so intellectually sharp. INTPs are mental model builders. They don't just collect facts, they create mental blueprints and models of how things work. And then they're constantly constructing and reconstructing these models to get them more and more precise and fine-tuned. Let's take a look at an example. Imagine that an INTP sees a pattern of how people argue online, and he decides to map out different people's particular debate tactics. INTP notices how arguments tend to loop endlessly from anecdotal evidence versus statistical evidence, or science versus intuition, and then he creates a mental model predicting what kind of response each argument will elicit. So he decides then to test out this model, this theory, by deliberately shifting his approach in debates. However, this ends up keeping him in a rabbit hole, and he starts questioning how communication itself works, and then he writes an essay on the fundamental flaws of human discourse instead of finishing maybe this actual work he has to do. INTPs are really good at just continuously refining their mental models, continuously refining these systems of how things work and testing theories. And sometimes in the process, they bypass a lot of the practical day-to-day stuff that needs to get done, which is why, again, we get back to where they might have forgotten to eat their lunch in the process of testing a new theory or discussing a new philosophy. INTPs tend to be logic first, feelings later people. They take a detached analytical approach to life, and they tend to do their best studying when they don't have to worry about emotional components. They tend to detach from their emotions and from the emotions of other people so they can do their best thinking. If there are a lot of emotional considerations in the picture, then it tends to be really frustrating for them to try to focus on what they need to troubleshoot or learn in the same way. INTPs are also really good at spotting inconsistencies and logical fallacies. If you have an argument with them, you better believe that it's airtight, and you should probably look at a diagram or infographic of logical fallacies to make sure that you're checking that none of your arguments are relying on these fallacies, because they will absolutely be the people to point that out. Their introverted thinking side can really map out a line of reasoning well and spot any little glitches in the reasoning. INTPs use a process called post-conventional decision making. What this means is they don't tend to follow societal norms. They tend to question everything and build their own frameworks based on logical principles, and this is how they'll go through life. Again, let's look at an example, because I always think examples make it a little bit easier to just fully understand a concept. Let's say that an INTP gets in trouble at school for wearing a non-compliant hoodie. Instead of simply following the rule, they decide to question the entire dress code within the school system. They ask themselves, does this code actually serve a practical purpose? Or is it just arbitrary control? They might ask themselves, how does my hoodie affect my ability to learn? It doesn't. To deal with this, because they can't stand things that don't make sense, they prepare a detailed, logical argument, citing studies on comfort and cognitive performance, deliver to the principal, and still get detention. For INTPs, there's this natural tendency to think outside the box, to question the rules and the norms. Because they're extroverted intuitives, they can see a dozen different ways something could be done, and they have a hard time when things just follow a very traditional route, when there's 11 other ways you could do something. They don't like feeling bound by someone else's idea of structure, someone else's idea of tradition. They don't like rules that don't seem to serve a logical purpose. They really want logical reasonings rather than just this because this is the way it's always been done, or because this is the way I did it growing up, or just because this is going to make things easier for everyone, or even emotional appeals can be really frustrating to INTPs. INTPs also are really good at playing devil's advocate and exploring many different sides to an issue. They can often debate something from several different perspectives, and this ability to do that also gives them a leg up when it comes to learning information and understanding all the different sides to something. But they're not trying to be contrarian just for the sake of it. They just really love to test ideas, refine arguments, and uncover those hidden truths that a lot of other people just miss in their hurry. INTPs tend to strengthen arguments by stress testing them. They don't just accept ideas at face values, they poke, they prod, and they attack an argument from every possible angle to see if it holds up. This means that if an idea survives an INTP's interrogation, then it probably holds up pretty well. Another benefit to their critical thinking is that they help others to spot biases and assumptions that they're making. Now, most people don't actually want to be told that they have a bias or that they're making an assumption. Most people want to believe that they're being fully unbiased and fully logical and reasonable all the time, but that's simply not the case. And unfortunately, INTPs are so good at being able to spot this that they end up sometimes inadvertently rubbing people the wrong way in the process. And it's very frustrating for INTPs because they do actually care about people. They do actually want to make a good impression. Everyone does, but they often get cast as these like pedantic, nitpicking trolls without people realizing that for the INTP, their motive is to actually help people have clearer thinking. And for them, that's actually being a kind and considerate person. If you're talking to an ENFJ, for example, and they're being very warm and insightful, and they're empathizing with you, and they're using their emotional intelligence to get into your shoes and to encourage you, you would think, oh, what a kind, nice person. When an INTP uses their strengths to spot biases, assumptions, and logical flaws in an argument or a way of thinking, their natural tendency is to try to clear that up for you. That's their way of trying to care for someone, of trying to take care of the relationship, try to help someone, is to clarify thinking. For thinking perceiving types, clarifying that thinking is a way of showing care, consideration, and support. The same motive is there that the ENFJ has when they're being empathetic and emotionally supportive. But while the ENFJ type might get some hugs, or they might get praise, or wow, you be considered such a nice, encouraging person and become very popular as a result, INTPs often struggle with getting the exact opposite result. People think that they're being inconsiderate, or they think they're being insensitive, or they consider them cold or robotic or being difficult for no reason, and they criticize them, or they say, I don't want to spend time with that person because, oh, they just tear my ideas apart. They're always spotting the flaws in my argument. They must not like me, things like that. And so it's often very difficult for INTPs because their natural way of supporting others is sometimes seen as an affront rather than as actually caring and supporting. And so many INTPs feel really frustrated in big social situations or in the process of trying to form friendships and relationships because they often feel like they have to water down this side of themselves. And that's really frustrating for them because it's like this is their natural strengths, and we all, as humans, want to play to our strengths. And it's sadly for many INTPs, they feel like they can't without getting criticized or rejected. And I've seen this so many times in my coaching practice with INTPs when I'm doing type clarifications with INTPs or working with them in some of their contexts. These stories where they tried to play to their strengths, they tried to do what they do best in friendships or relationships, and instead they ended up getting socially rejected. Rather than having that natural strength of theirs being seen for what it really was, which is this really important ability to clear up inaccuracies and assumptions in people's thinking so that people can actually have clearer and more effective thinking. So this is just something I harp on a lot, but I think it's really important for people to recognize that just because someone is showing support to you in a way that you don't see as being the way you want to be supported, it doesn't mean that they don't actually care. It doesn't mean that their intentions are wrong. And if we all had a little bit more open-mindedness and more ability to actually take some guidance from INTPs and to learn from the wisdom that they have to offer and to actually accept their perspective and see it as coming from a place of care rather than a personal affront, we would all actually be able to learn quite a bit more in the process. All right, so now that I'm done with my rant on that, let's move on to a little bit more information about INTP intelligence. INTPs are really good at encouraging innovation and alternative solutions. They don't like to do things the way they've always been done. They like to find new ways to do things, ways that might be more effective in the long run. I've seen this again and again with INTPs I've worked with in the past when it came to computer systems and things like that. There would be a supervisor who wanted us to use a system that's been around for a long time. And they would see little potential breakdowns in the system, and they would talk to the supervisor and be like, listen, if we continue to use this old system, we're going to run into security risks in the future because of this issue or that issue. We really need to update to a new system. Or they would find other potential risks as you were going that other people might just not have missed because they're so comfortable with doing things the way they've always been done. They're so comfortable using the system that they know. Whereas an INTP is very quick to notice where there might be an issue with sticking to the standard or doing just what's comfortable. And they might be the first to notice when you need to switch to a new and improved way of doing things. INTPs are also really good at teaching other people how to think, not just what to think. To them, it's not so important that you just agree with them. They want to teach you how to use your mind to think more cleanly, to think more accurately. They aren't interested in pushing their own beliefs. They're interested in getting people to think critically for themselves. By constantly questioning and analyzing, they teach people to examine their own thought processes. Now, INTPs are not without their weaknesses, so we're going to go ahead and get into just a little bit of that as well. Sometimes their intellectual hunger and their curiosity can drive them away from practical concerns. INTPs can get so caught up in these theories and ideas that they forget about the real world application. They might forget to sleep, they might forget to eat, they might forget to drink, they might hole up in their room by their computer just gathering all this data and information without actually using it, or they might forget to take care of themselves in the process. For example, an INTP might be creating the perfect productivity system or productivity model, but they get so busy refining it and tweaking it, optimizing it, that they don't actually get anything done. Number two, they can have inconsistent productivity. INTPs have a really hard time making themselves focus on something unless they're genuinely interested in it. And this can show up with issues in school where maybe they're given assignments they don't care about. Repetition is really annoying to them. And so they tend to like this steep learning curve where they're constantly being exposed to new ideas and new challenges. And if they're constantly having to do a lot of paperwork that's just repeating the same kinds of problems they've done again and again, they can get really demotivated and they may put very little energy into getting those assignments accomplished. When they're excited about something, you can't stop them from learning everything they want to learn about it. They go into full mad scientist mode for that's a stereotype, but whatever, we're going to lean into that anyway. Because they really want to learn everything about it. They want to test it. They want to try it out. They want to read everything about it. But if they don't care, then it's really hard to motivate them to do something. They need to feel like their imagination is triggered, their curiosity is sparked. And if it's not, then they can have a kind of inconsistent productivity when it comes to school assignments or even work assignments at times. Three, INTPs can struggle a bit with overthinking. Now, overthinking isn't always a bad thing. I don't think. I think it's really can lead to some really amazing insights, but at times it can get stuck in analysis paralysis and there might be an important decision to make and they just put it off and off till more problems arise as a result of that. I have a really good friend who's married to an INTP and he's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He's so imaginative, he's so creative, he's so intelligent, but she absolutely cannot count on him to make decisions. And so that's put a lot of burden on her in the relationship to always be the decision maker when it comes to decisions for the family or for big life decisions, like where they're going to move or what they're going to do for money or many different things that she would really like his support in making these decisions. But for him, it's the process. He gets stuck in this analysis paralysis black hole. And by the time he's made a decision, it's already too late. So in that relationship, I've seen where a lot of pressure is put on the judger in that relationship to make these decisions. And the INTP kind of over time just had the other type make the decisions and was more happy not taking the lead in that. But it definitely created a lot of tension. I've seen that quite a few times when I do couples coaching, where INTPs are really wonderful partners. They're really accepting, but they also sometimes put off making major decisions for so long that it puts the onus on the other person to make these decisions that are hard without a lot of help or input from the INTP. Now that we're over just a few of those potential weaknesses, and when it comes to weaknesses, I want to be clear, not every INTP is going to have those same set of weaknesses. Some have really worked past those, either through learning those as a child or through friendships and relationships they've experienced in the past, where everyone's at a different level of maturity. And some people are really mature in one aspect and not in another. Have really grown balanced in many aspects. So no two INTPs are the same. So I've definitely met INTPs who don't have those weaknesses, and I've met many who do. It just depends on your level of personal growth, how much you've challenged yourself, how much nurturing you've received for your strengths, and how much support you've received in developing your weaknesses. So again, this is not saying all INTPs do those things, it's just something that can be a weakness. Now, let's look at some of the greatest INTP minds in history. These names you will absolutely recognize. This just goes to show how much INTPs can really change the world. The number one famous INTP that you probably have all heard of is Albert Einstein. He revolutionized physics with his theory of relativity. He spent a lot of time in thought wandering around in apparently mismatched socks, but his thoughts changed the world. They changed the way we think about physics forever. And then we have Charles Darwin, who took decades to publish his work because he kept reevaluating it. He collected endless data and observed patterns before proposing evolution by natural selection. If you've ever seen an INTP in deep research mode, this was basically Darwin's entire life. And then lastly, we have Marie Curie. She pioneered research on radioactivity despite zero formal education guiding her. She discovered polonium and radium and earned 2 Nobel Prizes, one in physics and one in chemistry. And she was the first woman to become a professor at the University of Paris. So the common thread, all of these INTPs were obsessively curious, were independent thinkers, and were totally consumed by their work. Just imagine what the rest of the INTPs in the world could do if they were really supported in their unique personalities, if people saw their strengths for what they really were, if they were given the ability to learn in the way that best suits them. Just imagine what they could do, imagine what they could come up with, and how they could improve the world. If you'd like to learn more about INTPs or about the other personality types in the Myers-Briggs system, be sure to check out my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I've also written a book about the 16 personality types called Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type, where you can learn so much information about each of the personality types, from their cognitive functions, what creates stress for them, what relieves stress for them, what gets them in a state of flow, how they respond to parenting, so many different things. So definitely check that book out. If you're not sure of your personality type and you would like to get help clarifying your type, or if you simply have questions about your type and would like to have a one-on-one consult about that, definitely book a session with me. I do type clarification sessions or type coaching sessions. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've worked with hundreds of people, and I would love to work with you. I love talking type with people. I love helping people to find their best fit type. It's one of the most exciting parts of my job. So I would love to work with you. So I will leave a link in the description that you can click on to book a session with me. I look forward to talking to you about that. And like and subscribe for more videos like this. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.